Good evening, Winchester residents. Welcome to tonight's forum on the issues surrounding the potential purchase of the Hamilton Farm. This forum is sponsored by the Winchester League of Women Voters. I am Ann Bailey Berman. I'm a member of the Winchester League, and I'll moderate the forum tonight. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization, and our mission is to encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We also work to increase understanding of major public policy issues. It is for this purpose, to increase understanding of a very important public issue facing Winchester, that the League is sponsoring this forum. Without a doubt, Hamilton Farm is one of the largest issues that we faced in a number of years. And how we as a town move forward on it is something that we really need to have information and vote with understanding. Before I introduce the forum participants, just a bit about where Hamilton Farm stands to date. First, Hamilton Farm is a historical farm property of 19.2 acres of land at the west end of town. It has been taxed at a lower tax rate than the Winchester property tax due to its restriction to agricultural use. On November 14th last year, the owners notified our Board of Selectmen that they had entered into a purchase and sale agreement with Avalon Bay Communities during the previous July. Avalon Bay is a large residential developer, and the purchase price was $13.5 million. Simultaneously, Avalon indicated that its intention to build 260 rental units under the state's Chapter 40B law. This is the law which facilitates the construction of affordable housing in a community that does not provide at least 10% of its housing stock as affordable under state standards. This would allow Avalon to circumvent most town oversight and certain restrictions as long as 20% of the project is deemed affordable housing. Due to the tax status of the Hamilton Farm, the town has the right of first refusal, which in fact means that the town of Winchester has the right to purchase the property within 120 days of a signed purchase and sale agreement at the asking price of $13.5 million. March 15th is the trigger date by which the town must notify the owners that it intends to buy the property, or it loses that right forever. In the meantime, the Board of Selectmen solicited bids for use of all or part of the Hamilton Farm if the town were to buy the farm. By February 9th, the Board of Selectmen had received 9 proposals which have been reviewed and evaluated by various boards and consultants. At a special town meeting held this past Monday night, moderator John Sullivan noted that there is a very short window for the town to exercise the right to purchase the property, so that he urged that the town must move quickly. At the special town meeting members supported 3 motions related to Hamilton Farm. The members voted to allow the Board of Selectmen to purchase the property, and they did this by an overwhelming majority. They also voted to allow the town to sell all or part of the property for a minimum of $7 million. And third, they voted to authorize the selectmen to ask the voters for a debt exclusion to fund the purchase of the farm. It is this debt exclusion that the voters will make decision on March 13th. This is so the town can borrow $13.6 million outside the limits of Proposition 2.5 and then service the debt. The town plans to float a 20-year bond with the right for early repayments. This is one of 2 decisions that voters will make on March 13th. Now, I will introduce our panelists, and we will discuss the various issues involved. Individually, they bring unique points of view regarding Hamilton Farm based on their very active participation in the town. From the viewer's left and from my right, first is Ellen Burkhardt, a town meeting member and active in the town. Next to Ellen is Bob O'Connor, chair of the school committee. And next to me is Matthew Bronski, who is with the Historical Commission but represents himself tonight. And then next to Matthew is Elizabeth Gonine of the Finance Committee. I think the first discussion is to really begin this, let's frame the issues. And why is this important? Why weren't the Pansy Patch and the other farmland open space sales given this much attention? I heard someone compare this to Winning Farm. Is that the case?
This is really important because the town has a right of first refusal, and the right of first refusal comes from the prior use of the property. If we didn't have that right of first refusal, we would not be having this discussion. We have an opportunity to buy this property, but we only have one shot to exercise that opportunity. The election on March 13th has two questions. The first question is the Hamilton Farm question, and I would urge everyone to vote on that date and vote yes for Hamilton Farm, which will let us buy the property. And once the town owns it, we can determine what we wish to do with it, whether we develop all of it or part of it or some of it. And for that reason, it is very different from the Pansy Patch, where, for example, that was just a private sale and the town had no right to, in effect, step in and match the purchase price that a private developer had raised.
Right. Bob?
Well, I think, and with respect to that question, I think Ellen answered it perfectly. I think one of the things that's quite unique about this is the amount of work that's been done, and work by the Board of Selectmen and the leadership in town, I think, should be commended for that. The work that Elizabeth and the Finance Committee have done in terms of making the case, a clear case, that the voters should vote yes on March 13th for this particular question. And I represent the school committee, and the fortunes of this particular property and the schools are very closely aligned. And we appreciate all of the support that has come out for people who are concerned about the effect of the schools of this particular property if it were developed by Avalon Bay under the plan. As many people have seen, and Elizabeth has done a great deal of work, we might bring in another 50 students to the school system, another 80 students to the school system. This town must realize that we have an enrollment crisis. We alone, almost alone in terms of Massachusetts towns, have an enrollment that is growing dramatically. And every year for the past 5 years, we have added about 100 new students, and we will add about 110 new students next year. So while we're very concerned, and everyone is very concerned about the 50 students or maybe the 80 students that would come with this Avalon Bay, we're over the tipping point already in terms of enrollment, which I'd like to spend some time with in terms of space and teachers and things like that. The town is past the point in terms of what we can afford in terms of enrollment, and this just puts us even further. So the needs of the farm and the first question, and frankly the second question as well, are required to be voted yes for the school system and the town in general.
Matthew, for you, why
I think
is
it's
this
a very
important?
Well, I think it's important for a number of reasons. The property is just so important in so many ways. It's important from a historical standpoint. It's important from a land conservation standpoint. The town is actually an abutter to this property. The town owns the Lock Farm Conservation Area, and a lot of the runoff runs right towards the wetland that the town owns. So it's important for flood control reasons. We certainly don't want to exacerbate flooding issues in the town by paving over all that pervious surface that's currently absorbing water. It will have a colossal and I believe a devastating impact on the school system if the Avalon Bay proposal goes forward. And I think from a financial standpoint, and Elizabeth can speak to this better than I, it would have a devastating effect as well. So from almost any way that you look at it, it's an incredibly important issue for the town and for the voters.
Elizabeth?
Again, I'm representing the Finance Committee, and so we spent endless hours looking at this issue and talking to various people within town government, outside of Winchester, some of the other towns that have Avalon properties. And we came up with, by doing our financial analysis, that it's going to actually cost the taxpayer if Avalon Bay develops under Chapter 40B. We're looking at a cost to you, the taxpayer, of between $70 and $112 a year. And I know that there's been a flyer that has been sent to some of the town meeting members where it's saying that Avalon is going to be revenue neutral or even revenue positive, and we're showing in the low case of the student number that it's going to be in the negative $500,000 range, and in the high it's $800,000 in the negative. So it's definitely not revenue positive for Avalon to come to town.
And those numbers are per year.
And those are per
$500,000.
year, exactly. Thank you for that clarification.
One of the questions that that I've been hearing over and over again is, what is the historical significance of the farm? Matthew, can you help us on that?
Certainly. It's, well, first of all, just as a little bit of background, Winchester is one of the, it's extremely rich in historic resources. People often don't realize that we have about 375 properties in Winchester that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It's more than even Lexington. But even in a town that's that rich in historic resources, it's absolutely unparalleled in the town. There's nothing else like it. So it's the last working farm in Winchester. It's been farmed since the 1600s. It's really the last tangible link in Winchester to the 1600s. And it really represents the first half of our history as a town. From the 1600s up until about 1850, when the railroad came through, we were a town of farms. We were an agricultural town. And that was the first couple hundred years of our history. Since about 1850, we've become more of a residential town, and that's still what we are today. So it's our last tangible link to the first 200 years of our history. But its significance really goes well beyond Winchester. It's listed on the State Register of Historic Places, it's listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and is the only property in the entire town that has international level significance. People far and wide have recognized what a threat to Hamilton Farm and what a threat to the historic resources of the state, the country, and even to Canada the Avalon Bay proposal represents. So we've gotten calls from as far away as Canada. This property has become the first property in Winchester ever listed on the Preservation Massachusetts 10 Most Endangered list. So it's an incredibly significant property, and certainly a lot of people are watching what Winchester does here.
Anything? What about the conservation impact? Both the Conservation Commission and Lexington abutters say the development of the rear portion of the Hamilton Farm property would compromise wildlife corridors, wetland resource areas, and the like. Is that why there's so much national and international interest in the Hamilton Farm? I didn't realize this.
Right, there's certainly interest far and wide in the conservation issues as well. I think it's important to point out that all the historic designations I mentioned, National State Register, the international significance, the bronze plaque that was placed on the site by the Canadian government in 1980, those were all done far in advance of any threat to the property. So they're really independent assessments that it's really an important place. From a conservation standpoint, it's important as well. And there was similarly an independent recognition years ago by the state that this is, and I'm not sure if I'll get the title exactly right, I believe it's a critical supporting watershed. And it's one of only a couple within Route 128. So there are a couple places that are really important to wildlife habitat and to water quality, and this was independently recognized years ago as being one of them. The town of Winchester has an investment in the Lock Farm Conservation Area that could be adversely impacted by the type of and scale of development that Avalon Bay has proposed for the site. And a lot of that, as you mentioned, the western half of the site, and particularly the north slope of the West Hill, drains right into sensitive Winchester conservation land. It also butts the Lexington conservation land, and a lot of the site drains to that as well. So it's also really important from that standpoint. And the Avalon Bay proposal would really adversely impact that in all those ways.
Is there any portion that can be developed without adversely affecting either the historical part or the conservation requirements?
Well, I think the written preference of both the Historical Commission and the Conservation Commission is to save the entire parcel. But recognizing the fiscal constraints and realities of the town, the two commissions were asked to kind of put our heads together and to decide what portions could be most easily developed without impacting the most significant historic parts and without impacting the most significant conservation parts. And the northeast corner and the southwest corner are the parts that were chosen where development would have the least impact.
Can I add a comment on that, Ann? Which may go back to your point about why is this different from Winning Farm. I think it's very important that the voters understand that the selectmen have set a threshold for the dollars they wish to receive should we be successful in buying the property. Two-step process. We have to vote yes on March 13th, buy the property, and then the selectmen can decide what to do with it. And they have said publicly and in a variety of settings that they will not sell a portion or some of the property for less than $7 million, which I think is hugely helpful because it says to the voters that whichever proposal is decided upon, and that will be the subject of much discussion again down the road if we have the chance to discuss it, if the override passes, but you will not have the circumstance that I think bothered a lot of people with Winning Farm, where you had a big chunk of land being sold for a very cheap number and people wondering why that happened. So I think for people who are concerned about cost and concerned about overrides, there is great comfort that you can take and a lot of reason that you can support this because the town is going to realize part of the cost in fairly short order, and that is going to offset the tax cost to you, but you have to vote yes on the tax issue first, so we have that opportunity. I just wanted to
And we do have
outline that.
proposals. I
Yes,
mean, we
you
have
some
proposals
terrific
that,
proposals, yeah.
you know, are 13.5 all the way down to 4, but the majority of them are
Right.
over 7.
Right, exactly.
So, and every day I'm hearing from the town office that one of the other developers is calling and changing slightly their bid. So my understanding is they will go out for a best and final to get the best
Right.
deal for the town that preserves as much land as they can.
Well, there are two options. Either Avalon Bay is going to buy the land or the town is going to buy the land, and we'll
Correct.
know after the vote on March 13th. But let's assume that Avalon Bay buys the Hamilton farm, and they pay $13.5 million for it. And that means that the debt exclusion will fail. Now, on Monday night at the special town meeting, I heard some confusion about how many units there really are for Avalon Bay. Is it 260 units or is it 180 units?
If
Go ahead.
the town does not exercise the right of first refusal, the proposal that they have filed with the state is a Chapter 40B development with 260 units. Where the confusion is they then submitted a proposal as part of the RFP process for 183 units. But that assumes that the town exercises its right.
Okay.
Now, there might be some negotiations, but again, they've stated in their proposal that if the town exercises its right, or it doesn't exercise its right, that it will develop as planned under 40B.
And I want to be...
Unless you
right.
negotiate, but-
I want to be very clear to the voters about this. Avalon Bay wins when we are confused or divided or apathetic about this issue. They would love it if a lot of people didn't vote or people were confused or bothered or said, gee, 13.5 million is a big number, I'm not going to vote yes for that. They would love that because if that override vote goes down, they have an absolute clear shot to build 260 rental units, which would devastate the school system
Right.
and devastate pretty much every other department in town. The fire department would need a gigantic piece of equipment to reach up 4.5 stories. You can imagine the effect on DPW, more police, more fire. 20% of that 260 rental unit number would be low-income housing. The cost to the town would be extraordinary and catastrophic. And that's why I think a lot of us, including a huge majority of town meeting, the vote at town meeting was 150 to 1, which is pretty overwhelming, think that what really makes sense is to go out and vote yes on question 1 on the 13th, and then we can explore all these possibilities, realize some of the value of the land, develop it sensibly, be sensitive to all these other issues, but we've got to buy it first.
So let's be clear, what we're voting for on March 13th is the Avalon proposal for 260 units, and
Right.
it's a 40B.
We are
Not-
voting to buy the land to block that proposal. That's
So-
exactly
And it
right.
is not the 180 unit proposal.
Correct.
So a yes vote means that the town buys the land and can control its destiny
Exactly.
and can develop some part of it in a way that's sensitive and appropriate and can control who that developer is and select them and negotiate. If the town votes no, we get the 260 unit Avalon Bay development and we have no leverage whatsoever to negotiate.
I heard Mr. Parkhurst on Monday night say that this is a time for us to control our destiny,
That's right.
one way or
Right.
the other. So we're talking about 260 units. What will be the effect? Let's start with the schools. Bob.
Sure. Again, a lot of work has been done on this, and by the town consultant, Judy Barrett, and again, Elizabeth and the Finance Committee and the Selectmen. And they produced a report that said that we might get another 50 to 80 some odd students, rounding them, if I can.
Okay.
52, 83, I think, are the
Exactly.
exact numbers. So I know the numbers, I'm just trying to round them. And again, I think what people need to know is that this isn't just the only enrollment issue we have. Our schools are packed. We have taken over the past 5 years the equivalent of, we have 5 elementary schools, and we have packed in the equivalent of a 6th elementary school, the population of a 6th elementary school in our 5 buildings. There is no room. In the fall of '08, with our current enrollment projections, not including Hamilton Farm, not the Avalon Bay as it's proposed, or any other major developments, we have no room for any more students at the elementary level. Middle school was built for 800 students. It has 900 students now. It'll soon be at 1,000. The high school is over 1,000. This is an enrollment crisis without the addition of this. So we have problems in terms of the enrollment issues, in terms of having enough teachers, having enough space. This just pushes us further into a difficult situation and one that we have to avoid.
Elizabeth, what about the municipal side?
Well, I was just going to add to the school side. We were somewhat conservative because, again, there's this whole issue of what is the tipping point? When do you need to build a new school? And as far as our financial analysis was concerned, we looked at attaching additional modular classrooms to Vincent Owen, which is the most likely school that these children will go to. So you can imagine that type of environment as well, between 2 to 3 additional classroom modules.
And one could argue that the Vincent Owen School itself needs
Right.
major rehab or
Substantial.
major rebuilding.
Right.
So we are adding people to one of the least capable buildings to take that on. It's full. Ambrose, after being online for 2 years, is over capacity. Build it and they will come scenario. And so it is a crisis, again, not just of a capital perspective, but from an operating perspective. Elizabeth's analysis shows that the school costs would go up $500,000 a year. We are at the moment trying to get another $1 million in terms of an override. And if we don't get another $1 million in an override, and the second question, we have to lay off about 20 teachers and staff. So this is a time when we have to be looking at the overall issues that relate to the school and enrollment growth. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, you have the floor.
No, and I was also going to say, in the low case, it's 560,000 a year, but in the high case, it goes up to almost 900,000 a year. So
An additional
again,
school cost, right?
correct,
Break the budget.
right.
What about the
All right.
sewer system?
Well,
like
I mean,
this.
we didn't even address those types of issues because it was hard for us to really address it. What we looked at was really public safety. And again, when we did our analysis and did a presentation on January 30th, we said, you know, there are some other costs that you need to consider that are not even built into this presentation. But on the municipal side, we're looking at an additional five firefighters and 1 additional police officer to support that development. And the reason the number is so high for fire is because once you increase the by 1, you need to cover all the other shifts associated with that 1 firefighter. And we need a fire truck. Because the building is going to be multi-story, it's going to be, I think it's 75 feet high, you're going to need a fire truck with an extended ladder.
Again, this is the Avalon Bay proposal.
And this is the Avalon Bay proposal.
Right.
So if Avalon Bay doesn't come to town, then we don't need that fire truck. And that fire truck is $800,000. And so we looked at it over a 15-year life and included that in our estimate. But you know, the cost that we didn't include is traffic-related costs. We know traffic is going to be an issue if 260 units come in. And if you look at putting a traffic light at that intersection, it's going to cost $200,000 for 1 light, and then I believe it's $3,000 a year for maintenance of that light. A lot of cost.
A lot of cost. What about the Historical Commission? Do y'all have a view?
The historic resources of the site would be absolutely devastated by the Avalon Bay proposal. The Historical Commission prepared a letter to the town manager on what the exact impacts would be. So people sometimes ask us, well, which of the buildings on the site are historic? Well, there are 8 buildings on the 19.2 acre parcel. All 8 are historic, and all 8 are listed on the state and national registers. And in fact, the entire farm is, so including the land and features such as the stone walls or the well. So the entire site is historic, and what Avalon Bay proposes is essentially to bulldoze and fill that site with buildings. So when you look at their plan, it basically fills the entire site with buildings or with pavement, and it would just essentially bulldoze and devastate the farm. You wouldn't recognize the farm as we know it. They're figuring on destroying 6 of the 8 historic buildings and really all the essential features of the landscape. And that would also have an impact on the conservation land and on the ecosystems. So there's a very large hill on the western half of the site. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of it drains towards both Winchester and Lexington conservation land. And to get roads in and to run them at grades that are reasonable for traffic, they would be blasting out and hauling away that hill in thousands of dump trucks across our roads. And imagine what that's like if you're living in that neighborhood and hearing rock blasting all the time and giant dump trucks running through your neighborhood. So there's a tremendous impact to historic resources, to conservation, and really to the quality of life in that neighborhood.
We've been talking about the liabilities if Avalon Bay buys the Hamilton Farm, but what about the benefits? I know that I just read that Avalon Bay said that that if they bought the property, that the town would receive $1 million in additional revenue, plus $250,000 to $375,000 in ongoing revenue. The town's always looking for money.
Hogwash.
But you might have revenues, but they forgot to say that there's cost
exactly.
offsetting those revenues.
Exactly.
And again, I'm showing in my model for the low case that yes, there's going to be about $600,000 of revenues coming in a year for Avalon Bay, but in the low case of the low estimate of school children, there's going to be a negative or $1 million or $1.1 million of expenses offsetting that revenue. So you're showing a net to the town of a negative $500,000.
And that's a conservative number.
And that's conservative.
Right.
That's the low case number. So again, we figured out it's going to cost a taxpayer $70 a year for Avalon. So they haven't provided the Finance Committee with any information that we could use and analyze. I mean, this is what we're working off of.
Another benefit is, and I'm a member of the Housing Authority, is that Winchester's definitely below the 10% state requirement for affordable housing. They would provide us with a number of units that would make sense and get us closer to our required percentage. Any of y'all have thoughts on that?
I do, and I just want to say that if the goal is to get the voters to vote for this, the cost of not voting for it, as Elizabeth and everyone else and Bob have explained, is extraordinary. And the proposals that the selectmen have received from private developers all include very substantial funds or allocations for low-income housing. One proposal would give the town $2 million in cash to do with what it will, which would buy quite a lot of low-income housing. Other proposals would set up a certain number of units or do a variety of things. I think, and I want to say this very clearly to everybody, because town meeting discussed this at some length on Monday, and I think it was very useful. Avalon Bay is a Virginia-based public company that has built these gigantic rental sort of high-rise slums in towns all around 93 and 128. There's one up in Reading, there's one as you go up toward Andover, up by the Mishawam exit. They, I suspect, did not anticipate the kind of opposition that Winchester has provided, the sort of political sensitivity, the sophistication, the fact that we really care about the town, and we really, all of us, from all kinds of political stripes and parties, care about the character and the future and the viability and the financial stability of the town. And this project would just blow a hole in all of those. So I think there's an opportunity to address some of those issues again down the road once we own the property, which I just think is so critical.
Anything else?
I used to live around the corner in Reading from where they built that, but I got out in time. The people that we go back and visit say that you can see it as you go up 93, has entirely changed the community up there, and I hope you don't simulcast to Reading. It's a whole different community, and it's a whole different neighborhood as a result of that monstrosity of development that they have there.
And I actually recently was having some people over for dinner who are from Newton, and there were like 3 or 4 couples from Newton. It was a faculty dinner. And when I mentioned Avalon Bay, they said, oh my God, because Newton has 2 Avalon Bay properties, one on Highland Avenue, I believe, and then one in Chestnut Hill. And they are still trying to assess the impact of the Avalon Bay property on Highland Avenue. They did not anticipate that the traffic was going to be what it was. So,
and also, once it's there, it's
can't,
there.
yeah.
I mean, you're just cooked, and that's why we have to block it now, is the hope.
What about the CPA, the Community Preservation Act? One thing that I've heard is that a number of people believe that this is a means, if this passes, and it's going to be on the ballot on March 27th, that it will provide the dollars to pay for Hamilton Farm.
Who wants to today? Which part of that statement should we take on first? So much of it.
Well, I think the town has not wanted to rely on CPA, and that's to their credit. This is just so important that the town vote yes on question 1 and take control of the destiny of this property that they really didn't want it to be contingent on a whole series of events, where it wasn't clear if the timing of it would work out. So the way question 1 is set up, if people vote yes on question 1, and I think they should, the town has the destiny of Hamilton Farm in its hands. If, and Town Council Wade Welch said he could see a series of events where the timing might work out where CPA funds could be used toward Hamilton Farm, great, that's frosting on the cake. But the town didn't want to rely on that scenario, and I think they're being wise in that way.
I agree with Matt. I also think it's important that people recognize that the Community Preservation Act, which we're all shorthanding with CPA here, the question of adopting it will be on the March 27th ballot. What it would do is raise everybody's taxes by 1.5% every year, essentially forever. That's a whole nother discussion, and I think that's a useful discussion to have. But Matt is exactly right, that the issue of blocking Avalon Bay, and we only have one way to do it, and that's voting yes on this override, is on March 13th, and that's important.
But the CPA does provide for dollars for open land, for historic purposes, and also for housing, all which are important to Winchester. And then the Commonwealth matches, 50% to the dollar for that. So, but can it be used to fund
I think the
Hamilton
short
Farm?
answer at town meeting was it cannot be used really unless you stretch the scenarios in a lot of very ways. I mean, it's highly unlikely but possible was kind of the conclusion, that those monies would be available to buy the property. It is possible down the road some of those monies, if the CPA increase were passed by the voters, would be available to maintain some of the properties or to sort of do some historic education or conservation things. But to buy it was a stretch. I think that's the conclusion everybody came to Monday night.
Yeah, the way I took the town council's response, there's no question at all that if CPA came on later, even if it couldn't be used for acquisition, it could be used for, say, maintenance of historic buildings or open space or trails. And the whole stickiness of the question about acquisition was because the way the CPA is written, you can't use it retroactively to kind of fund something you've already purchased.
Right.
And the stickiness is there are so many key dates in the Hamilton Farm process. When the town got the notice that Avalon Bay was going to buy it,
Right.
When we execute a vote at town meeting, when we do one town-wide,
Right.
when we actually act on it, which of those dates is really key, and how does that relate to the CPA vote?
Right.
So that's essentially the uncertainty with using the funds for acquisition.
And didn't they also change the timing of Chapter 61A?
Yes.
Which
Right.
also had an
Yes.
impact. So if you go by the old regulation,
Yes, that's exactly right.
you might be able to use it because of the later date, the later closing date, which I think is in July. But realistically, it sounded like they were subject to the new Chapter 61A.
And the change from the old 61A to the new 61A happened in the middle of the process, so the dates are just even further
Right.
confused.
And that's where I think knowing who the adversary is really matters, because Avalon Bay is not some two-bit local developer. They are a huge, well-funded public, they're actually a REIT, a real estate investment trust. So if there is any daylight between what we are allowed to do under our right of first refusal and what we actually do, that's going to be a problem. So we need to be crystal clear on following the letter of the statute and exercising this right. I think that's exactly it.
Okay. Now let's turn to circumstances if the voters approve the debt exclusion bill on March 13th. There are some people concerned about their property taxes, and they think that the taxes will increase dramatically. What can people expect?
We looked at it. We looked at 13.6 over 20 years, and it would cost the average taxpayer around $154, $155 a year, and that's based on an assessed value of $755,400. And if you want to know exactly how much it's going to cost you, the FinCom's presentation from January 30th is on the town's website, and we actually have the formula in there. But basically what you do is you take 0.205 times your property's assessed value divided by 1,000, and that would actually give you how much it's going to cost you. So if you're...
Say that one more time for people.
Okay. What you do is you take 0.205 and multiply it by your property's assessed value and divide that by 1,000, and that will equal your total additional tax. And remember, in the worst case scenario, because we talked about this, because a lot of people have suggested that it be kept entirely for open space, and I know that based on the ballot vote, that's not going to happen right now, but the calculation is on a 20-year bond. So after 20 years, that disappears. Right. It's not like an Avalon Bay cost, which goes on and on and on. And exactly. That's what needs to be made perfectly clear, as well as the costs are going to escalate. I mean, we were just basing it on a simple escalation factor when we were looking out 5 years.
So that means that the cost you calculated is level for 20 years, and then it's gone forever.
Exactly.
And that's the cost
right.
to purchase the land, whereas the Avalon Bay cost starts out at a number, right. goes up every year with inflation and everything else
right.
forever.
Forever.
Right, which is the killer. And also the number that you just talked about, if the town in fact did develop part of the property under any number of the proposals that are out there, that would reduce the cost to the taxpayer. Because
Well,
the
let's
town would-
turn to that right now. What are the selectmen's options? Let's say that the voters do approve the debt exclusion. The town is able to buy the land. What will the selectmen do? What will happen to that land?
What I think they've said so far, and I certainly can't speak for them, is they have reduced the 9 bidders who submitted serious proposals to a short list of 5. There was some discussion about that at town meeting. I suspect there will be a great deal more discussion about that over the next couple of months. There's been a lot of informal discussion about ways that each of those proposals could be improved. As Matt mentioned, some prices might be raised, some densities might be reduced, some particular parcels might be sort of marked to be preserved. Lots of ways you could tweak them. But that process would happen after the purchase. And then the selectmen also said to town meeting that they would bring their, in effect, short list of finalists again back to town meeting for discussion. So there'd be more public comment on all of that.
I think a yes vote gives us options and gives the Board of Selectmen options, and I think they've handled this beautifully, and I think they've built a lot of trust and confidence, and I think the information sessions, which seemed almost to be every night, that they were doing is just an incredible amount of work that they have done to communicate. And if we vote no, we take it out of their hands and out of our hands. A yes vote puts it in their hands. We should have great confidence in them. It's economically overwhelming for the schools. It's critical. But back to the Board of Selectmen, I have every confidence that they will take us through the second stage of this process, which will be, now what do we do with the land? If we don't vote yes, we don't have that conversation.
Any comments over here? Any thoughts?
We have some good proposals, and they go to revenue positive to slightly revenue negative. You know, we go all the way from somebody who is willing to give the average household a bonus of $49, I mean, because that's additional revenue coming in, to as low as a negative 91. Again, there's a range, but there are the options there. And there, again, Matthew was mentioning that if we vote yes on March 13th, the town will be able to control what happens. And they'll be able to negotiate with these developers to get what is good for the town.
Exactly.
And I have tremendous faith, being involved in this process and having it as transparent as it's been, that we will get the best deal for the town.
There were 9 proposals. At the town meeting, the selectmen announced that they had narrowed their list to 5.
Correct.
But let's be very clear, the voters will not be voting on any of these options on March 13th.
Right.
That's right.
This is something that's been left by the town meeting members to the selectmen. Am I right?
Correct.
That's
Yeah,
absolutely right.
that's right. Yeah.
And I think it's very encouraging that the town received the proposals it did, because you have to understand with the really limited time frame that they were working within. They had 120 days to respond. We're still in that 120-day time period. You know, town staff very quickly put together a request for proposals, put them out on the street, didn't give developers much time to respond, and had their hands tied because they couldn't get the developers really access to the site or seeing inside the buildings or knowing what the soil's like or anything else. And even with all those difficulties, which are going to tend to keep the prices down and really temper the positive nature of the responses, they still got some pretty good responses. So it really tells you that the town can do well with this.
Have the selectmen indicated in any way the criteria that they're going to use on for the selection, or show which way that they're leaning?
I think they've tapped into a lot of resources in the town appropriately. They've asked people who have very significant interests, from historic to conservation to municipal to schools to everybody else, to weigh in, and I think they will continue to do that. I think Matt's point is an excellent one, because it says how much value is in that property.
Right.
I mean, literally, people have not been able to walk the site because it's private land right now. So if we vote yes and we buy it, then all these developers can walk around and further improve their proposals with some competitive nudging, and all kinds of things can happen that could be really quite promising.
Does this affect the schools in any way?
Because this whole thing affects the schools
Have I
in
opened
any
this
way.
up for you?
Well, yeah, thank you. If that's the softball lob, I think that it's refreshing to see that people have been so passionate about adding potentially 52 children or 83 children in the range that we've talked about. If we voted no on March 13th, we will get those children. And the school system can't say no. We don't say no to children. We do our best every day to take care of these people. And people have been passionate about keeping that enrollment out of the system. And I request that we be equally passionate about the 110 new kids who are coming next year, no matter what. Without any new developments, another 110 and another 110 after that, and the following year. And we have to be equally as passionate about that. Winchester is unique. It's the only town, with the exception of Wellesley, that is growing its enrollment. Out of 20 other towns that the municipal benchmarking survey came up with, everybody else is flat enrollment. We have a unique problem. Wellesley has a unique problem. Wellesley has passed 9 operating overrides to deal with their enrollment issues. And these two questions, in my opinion, are related very closely, because if we care about not having 50 to 80 new kids in Hamilton Farm, we have to care about the 100 students who are coming next year no matter what. And we have to take care of the 500 students, new students, who've shown up in the past 5 years. And we now have almost 4,000 students in our school system. We're a victim of our own success. Families are flocking to Winchester because of the school system. So the second question with respect to the override, can I do that? Mm-hmm. The second question in the override, I'd like to play by the rules. There's an operating override, and I encourage you to vote yes for that, because these are linked together. And we can't just care about certain kids, we have to care about all the kids. And if you want the selectmen to have options after this, I think the second override question is very important, because if our operating budget is falling apart, the selectmen will have to look at financial decisions only, possibly. And if we want to consider the plethora of options, 2 yes votes will allow them more flexibility, more opportunity to do what's best for the town, conservation-wise, financially, and so forth. It's not just about one question. In my mind, it's about 2 questions. Vote yes for both of them if you're concerned about the overall town and especially the school system. You'll regret all three.
I regretted that.
No, you
But let's move quickly back to the options. The boards, certain boards have already reviewed it. We've had consultants review it. We know that each of the plans as they exist now, as they were made, are on the town's website. What are they using to evaluate these different options? What are some of the criteria?
Well, I can tell you how we're evaluating. Again, what we tried doing is, because we had done a fiscal impact analysis on Avalon Bay, the Chapter 40B, we wanted to be consistent in our approach to evaluating the other proposals against that, so we weren't in any way biasing these proposals. And so we looked at the same student ratios. We looked at the same cost. So we said that if a building is over 35 feet high, we needed a fire truck. If it was over a certain threshold of people, we need an additional police officer. The same thing with fire. So we used the same criteria that we used in the original analysis on Avalon Bay. Does that help answer that question?
That helps. Anything else? We're beginning to run out of time. Does anyone want to make a final comment? Ellen?
I do.
You look like you're ready.
This is the ballot, voters of Winchester. This is exactly what it will look like. The Hamilton Farm question is number 1. I would urge you to vote yes for that. It's March 13th. It's 2 weeks from yesterday. If you're going away, you can go to the town clerk's office tomorrow or any time in the next week and vote. You can vote absentee. If there's a snowstorm, you can vote the day before. This one really matters. This one really, really matters. So I would urge everyone to circle the 13th and vote yes on that question. And I thank you for your interest, and I thank the League for their interest and their time.
And I would just make sure that we don't fold the paper.
No, it's folded at the bottom.
As long as it's folded in the right spot, because I think this is one question. I think it's about the town. I think it's about the students. And they are like this. And if you want to give the selectmen options, vote yes on both questions. I already have absentee. And I think we can't just care about a certain amount of students. Our town is being overrun with students. That's a good thing, but it's not a good thing if you don't have the money to educate them.
Matthew?
Well, I think if you care about the historic character and resources of the town, you'll vote yes on one. If you care about the environment and saving the planet, you'll vote yes on one. If you care about flooding issues in the town, you will vote yes on one. If you care about the school system, you will vote yes on one. And if you don't really care about anything but your own pocketbook and your tax bill, you will still vote yes on one because it's still going to cost you less than the Avalon Bay proposal.
Elizabeth?
I just want to say we discussed this issue over and over again in the FinCom, and we recognize the financial impact is not the only thing you should be looking at when making a decision on whether to exercise the right of first refusal. The town really needs to control its own destiny. And while I can definitely say, based on the analysis that we did, that it will have a negative impact, again, that's not the only thing that you need to take into consideration. It's a beautiful piece of property. So I suggest strongly that people vote yes on March 13th.
I'd like to echo that because at various times in its history, just to lend a little historical perspective to it, the town has really stepped up and recognized that it's not just all about money, but it's about the character of the town and the places that we make that are part of our shared community. So in the, I think Stephen Parkhurst did a good job the other night at town meeting running through a few of them, but in the 1860s, the town bought Winchester Common, the land that's now the Winchester Common, for everyone. In the 1880s, we bought land from Stoneham that's now the reservoir for water supply. Around the turn of the century, the town, and in particular a few very visionary people in the town, had the vision to buy up what was kind of unsightly industrial shacks along the downtown, along the Aberjona, and envision that as a place that would be shared by all of us and that would be a gem in the center of town. So it's hard to look at the Horseshoe Dam today, Sandy's Island, the Mill Pond, that area that we all cherish so much, and think that that was just kind of an unsightly industrial hovel. But that's what it was until the town had the vision to step up and do that. It's almost like the words of Chad Moore that we felt so strongly about. We carved them in granite at the back of the library that have no small dreams because they fail to stir the blood of men. We need to remember that. And we stepped up again around the World War II years when times are tight, bought the town forest, and in many years since then to acquire conservation land. And I think throughout all those times, they had it easier than we have it today. Because in a lot of those cases, the alternative for buying it was just, it wouldn't cost the town anything. You know, they were really paying the full freight. And here, it would cost us more not to do it than to do it. So it really just makes it all that much easier for us.
I heard David Mortensen say it's one generation taking care of the next generation.
That's right.
By making an investment into the town. Just out of curiosity, how much more open space do we have in the town?
You know, I looked at the Mass Stats website recently, and this just frightened me.
Not much.
So I knew we had a lot less open space than our peer towns of, say, Concord and Lexington. But what really shocked me was the percent of open space in Winchester is lower than that in Medford, and it's lower than that in Lynn.
Wow.
If you can believe that. So you can't really say we don't have a need for open space. And as Ellen pointed out early on, it's a rare, rare opportunity. You know, the Pansy Patch was actually under 61A for many, many years. And just prior to its private sale, they took it off the 61A tax rolls. So the town never got the right of first refusal. The town never got the right to buy it. Thankfully, that didn't happen here because it could have happened just before the sale, and we do have that chance. So it's a rare opportunity. I'd be understating it if I said it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because that has been privately held, that land, since the 1600s. That's once in several lifetimes opportunity.
Any other? This is concluding our discussion. Wincast is going to put the question 1 up on the screen so you can see it. Shall the town of Winchester be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, so-called, the amounts required to pay the debt service on a bond in the principal amount of $13.6 million issued in order to acquire the Hamilton Farm property. This will cover the $13.5 million which Avalon Bay has offered to pay for Hamilton Farm, and then another $100,000 to cover soft costs such as lawyer fees and
Closing
other
costs.
What other kind of fees?
Closing costs. and
Closing
consulting.
costs and such that will be covered. So we hope that Winchester voters will go to the polls on March 13th, if not before, voting absentee and casting their votes, regardless of how you're voting. These two decisions, and the two decisions now I believe are going to be put up on the screen. One for the Hamilton Farm, the second for the override, are critical to the future of Winchester. And as David Mortensen said, it's one generation taking care of the next generation. We are facing financial issues, and I believe you'll see those on the screen. Before we go, I have to say that we have to thank, there are a number of members of the League of Women Voters that have worked diligently to put this forum on. I don't think oftentimes do we realize how much time and effort that it takes to do something like this. And I think we need to especially thank Madeline Kaiser, who was even running around dropping off
She was stalking us.
stockings.
Early in the morning.
I think she has my email address now memorized. And then the other is Cam, who is here. We've got, 10 people here right now that are all working to put this on. This is a public service, and we should be proud of the town of Winchester that we have this kind of service in the town.
And yourself as well.
And yourself as well.
Thank you very much. So again, we urge you to go vote on March 13th at the polls, and best wishes and good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was very
That was
nice.
very good. Thank you very much.
Peas and carrots.